A significant piece of the U.S. energy infrastructure is hit by hackers, and the ripple effect will impact all Americans at the gas pump. But is this the wake-up call that will really make a difference? We discuss that next on the Cyber 24 podcast presented by Valcom. All right, welcome to the Cyber 24 podcast, a weekly podcast dedicated to helping business and governmental leaders better understand the often intimidating topic of cybersecurity so you can make better decisions for your organization. I'm Marty Carpenter of 24/9. I work in strategic communication, public affairs, and government relations, and I'm joined today by none other than Mike Hussey, Director of Services for the Utah Department of Technology Services and the former Executive Director of the same organization. Mike, thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marty, for having me on the show today. I always enjoy our time together and love talking about this great topic.
Hey, our topic this week, as I mentioned in the open, the Colonial Pipeline attack. Until just these past few days, it is quite probable that you had never heard of the Colonial Pipeline. You would not be alone in that. I had never heard of the Colonial Pipeline. Here's what it is. It's a 5,500-mile system of pipes that moves 100 million gallons of fuel each day from Texas to New Jersey. That's roughly 45% of all the fuel consumed in that region flows through these pipes at some point. The AP reported that this particular attack was an attempt by a group called DarkSide. So, Mike, let's start here. What do we know about the attack, and what do we know about the attackers?
What we know about the attack is that it was a ransomware attack. That these bad actors, there's a lot of speculation that they're Russian-based, and it seems likely that they are from everything I can tell and some of the information I've heard about these folks. The bad actors launching their spyware into the ether and happen to land, maybe targeted, maybe untargeted, maybe just happenstance, with Colonial Pipeline. And we're able to compromise many of their systems. And then, of course, just as ransomware does a very good job of doing, it spreads like a virus. We're in a pandemic era. We understand what that's like. And it just spread rampant throughout their organization, shutting down systems that were controlled this pipeline. Yes, it's. I read somewhere there's 50 million Americans are affected by this pipeline going up the East Coast, and disrupting their lives. Now, how it landed there exactly was it something that came through a payload that came through email, and in an inadvertent mouse click, or maybe a not too savvy eye clicked on something they shouldn't have. And maybe they had administrative rights on the computer. A lot of that's still unknown and will yet to come out. We've had some very minor briefings on what's going on, but we're in the throes of it now, and we'll probably get a little more information. But one thing is for sure, it was ransomware. And interestingly, these bad actors, they actually sell their work to other bad actors. So they do a great job of creating these payloads and dropping into email systems or on websites, and they sell this to other bad actors. So they're really monetizing their efforts just about any way they can. But that's what we know right now, is that, yes, it came in through ransomware onto these machines and locked up the machines and demanding a lot of money. And it's interesting because we really don't know exactly how it got on there, but just like we use our computers every day, it's likely that it came in just with any other email.
That brings up an interesting question, and maybe one that's more salacious than actually informative. But as they do the digital forensics on this and unwind this, once they get the system back up and running, will they likely be able to figure out exactly who, or if it's multiple people who made the same mistake? Will they be able to say, hey, look, these are the 20 people, or, heaven forbid, for one poor guy, hey, it was John in accounting, or, Fred in Fred in payroll or whatever, who clicked on the link, and that's what caused it. And, if you think that might be you, how much are you sweating that right now if they can find that out?
There may be a very nervous employee at Colonial Pipeline right now. And oftentimes you can get to that kind of detail. I remember one issue that we had at the state. We were seeing a lot of data going out the front door. We didn't know exactly what was going initially. We didn't know what was going on. We just saw that these servers were filling up. And it was the bad actors doing some things. And so, unfortunately, some of our people purged some log data that would have been very valuable in the forensic investigation side of things, but they were just trying to, hey, something, the server's filled up, we got to clear off some space. Of course, the first thing they cleared off was log data, which allowed us to miss some of important information. I'm not sure in the Colonial Pipeline issue yet if they had to go to that kind of effort, and they likely will have a lot of the data that will have the smoking gun pointing at some unfortunate employee or number of employees, and that was the initial, oops, I clicked on this.
Well, now that the federal government's involved, that person, whoever he or she may be, has to worry that this will end with them testifying before Congress and having members of both parties put on a show just yelling at them to try to gain some political points. That's the thing that I think I'd be most concerned about, or maybe they'll find that entertaining. Who knows? So this group, DarkSide, I've heard them described as a Robin Hood type cyber gang. And that's because they try to, as Robin Hood would indicate, rob from the rich and give to the poor. They actually donate portions of what they steal to charities. I think that's both amazing and also a remarkable public relations and business plan that is very sophisticated for what you would think of as not a terribly sophisticated organization. But, I'm starting to think they've got a website, they've got a philanthropic arm, they've got a public relations way of going about this, a strategy there. So it just surprises me, I guess, and maybe it shouldn't, that they're that sophisticated, even so much that they went on to issue an apology of some sorts.
Yeah, absolutely. It is interesting. These bad actors, they're very organized. If you pay the ransom, they'll unlock your data. They know that if they start acting like really truly bad actors might, where's their reputation? So they want to continue to have their clients out on the internet that fall victim to their ploys. But yes, they do have to be reputable. And so if you, even in paying for your data, if you buy your data back, they take it off, it's no longer for sale. And so there's a lot of their reputation on the line. And so, yeah, they think, hey, we need a PR firm. We're going to donate some of our proceeds, if you can use that term, to charitable organizations. Who knows what those things are. But they try to couch themselves as a business, if you will, that does this. Now, I know there are actually some towns in Russia that is their business, is hacking, and that's what when the kids are going to kindergarten, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a hacker. They just kind of start with that mentality at that age, and they grow up into that space. And many of these folks are employed with these hacking skills at a very young age, and it's just part of life in this town. So it is kind of a little bit of a hard to see from our side of the water, but it's really interesting how, that's kind of how they do it, and they feel very reputable in their efforts.
Interesting that no matter where you go, everyone's trying to get kids involved in STEM, even if it's hacking on the other side of the Atlantic. And I love this idea of sort of honor among thieves, that their business success is somewhat dependent on having a reputation of they will pay or they will give you back your data and unlock your data in your systems if you will pay. Which is kind of interesting because in this instance, no figure has been reported about how much ransom was demanded or if it was paid. I would say this, that usually if a company does not say that they are not paying the ransom, that's a good indication that they are paying the ransom, or at least they are negotiating to pay the ransom. But in this case, Mike, I thought it was interesting because the Associated Press reported that the attackers, not only was this a ransomware situation, but they actually stole data from the company. And, this is often done, as I understand it, for extortion purposes. But can you help us understand a little bit why that is perhaps a bigger concern for the company than the actual ransom amount, this data that was lost?
And again, going back to the reputation, and let me just toss out a couple of numbers. It was interesting. I kind of noticed we don't know the cost of their ransom yet. We don't know if they paid it, if they haven't, where they are in the process. I know the FBI is involved. The FBI is very good at helping negotiate that ransom down. I remember reading a couple of years ago that the average ransom paid was a high 80s or 180,000 through to 2019, Last year, it was about more like 315,000. I can't remember the exact number. So you can see exponentially it's growing. The highest ask ever was about 15 million up until last year. It was now 30 million. So that you can see that they're doubling down on their efforts and they're knowing that this is lucrative. Now, if you can actually get that ransom and then say, hey, how can I sharpen my saw and exfiltrate data at the same time that I can then sell for maybe espionage purposes, or, there's a lot of corporate issues at play here, where now all of a sudden they have other data that company may be willing to pay for. So when they get that foothold, they're not just going to lock your data. They're going to be looking at other ways of monetizing their efforts. And yeah, hey, if Robinhood has that much more money, just think all these charitable organizations benefit as well. So it's really unfortunate.
How fortunate are we? I mean, it's a horrible situation, right? I mean, it's a bad situation. It's a negative situation. But were we fortunate in some ways that this attack on the Colonial Pipeline, that the motive was money and not that someone was actually trying to cripple the fuel supply, or at least allegedly not trying to cripple the fuel supply to the Northeast? And it just seems like to some extent you have to count yourself fortunate if you're the whole country, maybe not so much if you're Colonial Pipeline.
Yeah, no, and you raise a good point. I guess if there's any silver lining in any of this, that wasn't their intent, and that was kind of what you alluded to earlier, was the apology issued as, hey, we weren't trying to disrupt the oil pipeline issue to the eastern United States. We were just trying to monetize our efforts. They can go through. It's lucrative. Their business is lucrative. They can repeat it. It's repeatable. What a great business model. Without the intent to disrupt what they did, all of that critical infrastructure, that was just kind of one of those byproducts. And oftentimes those bad actors, they're very bright people, but they sometimes don't consider all of their efforts and what ramifications might bring. But yeah, and it was interesting that they did issue that apology. At the same time, they're bad actors. They're trying to extort a lot of money. They're trying to they may come back and ask for more money for that data that was siphoned off. Who knows? But it really is unfortunate, and we as the consumers will probably be paying for a while for their efforts.
Mike, the AP reported on Sunday, Colonial Pipeline said it is developing a system restart plan. Said its main pipeline efforts are offline, but smaller lines are now operational. System restart plan. We talk a lot about preparing for these and preventing these types of situations, but in preparing for them, system restart plan seems like something they should have developed already. I mean, does that strike you as like that's an indication that maybe they didn't have all of the preparations in place that they needed?
Well, yes, I think you prepare for the worst, and you know what? As technology evolves, sometimes you don't go out and you refresh your COOP plan as often as you should, and then all of a sudden you've moved on to maybe a cloud solution, and then you come back and we didn't anticipate something. And so that's why this is a good lesson for all of us to say, hey, good thing it didn't happen to us. Unfortunate it happened to Colonial Pipeline. But maybe the lesson I learned from this is to blow the dust off my COOP plan every 6 months, take a look at it and see is there things that need to be refreshed in that. Because you certainly don't want to be trying to figure it out while your hair's on fire, while your systems are locked up, while you're trying to restore things, and you've got the nation eyeing you to look at your every little step that you're going to make and trying to figure out, yes, what is the right thing I should be doing? That should be thought out long in advance. That COOP plan and your communication strategy, how you're going to sustain business operations. We look at that and we prioritize them at the state. We say, hey, look, first thing that needs to come up is this. The next thing is this. And we prioritize systems, and we have the resilience in those systems to allow us to come up so that, hey, like number one thing for us, paychecks. No, I'm just kidding. And so we want to make sure that our financial systems are up. But yeah, maybe the highway patrol systems, those life-saving kinds of things for our citizens need to be the number one priority. Paychecks maybe are way down on the list. But in any case, we really want to make sure that those systems are outlined in a COOP plan that's reviewed often. And technology is always changing. And so it just shows you how often you need to be blowing off the dust of that COOP plan, not every 5 years or 10 years, but actually, saying, hey, check the box. Yeah, I did my COOP plan. But hey, let's review it all the time and make sure that anytime we're pivoting on technology, that we refresh our COOP plan.
Well, you touch on that a little bit. So, one, I want you to tell our audience what you mean by a COOP plan, and two, a simple question that with I'm sure a very complex answer, and maybe one that without all the information is impossible to answer. But what does it take to get back online after an attack like this? And start with give us a definition, please.
Yeah, continuing operations. So sorry, COOP is short for continuing operations, COOP. And that just says, what do I need to do to continue operations at certain levels? And what are the order that I will bring systems up? And what's my messaging going to be? And what's my strategy going to be? And what if, I lost the primary site and I only had my secondary site? What are the kinds of things and the kinds of systems I need to bring in, and how am I going to gather the employees? Where will the employees gather if this building is gone? Those kinds of things need to be spelled out in a continuing operations plan. And yes, we do tabletop exercises where we run through our COOP plan, where we say, look, this is what the Highway Patrol is going to do. This is what the Department of Technology Services is going to do. These are all of the groups coming together to go through that tabletop exercise and say, hey, did we think of everything? And then scenarios are run through. Hey, we're going to pretend an earthquake happened in Salt Lake City, Utah, and let's see what are the kinds of things that we would do to simulate an earthquake and to respond in the best way possible to keep the citizens as best we can. So there's that. And what was the second question you had, Marty?
Just what does it take to get back online after an attack like this? And it sounds like you want to sort of segment it and figure out where to start and work through it methodically. And I guess part of that is also you got to make sure that you've actually closed off the vulnerability before you start fixing it, or you're going to get hit with ransomware right after.
You may restore all your systems, get them working again, and then start standing up systems, and then boom, it goes down again. So yes, you need to plug the hole. That's initial kind of the very initial thing you would do. But then also, we have the luxury in the state of Utah where our governor can bring in National Guard and other systems. If you read about Texas, for instance, they had a large outage for a while. They brought in their National Guard to help start restoring systems where you're out trying to clean systems. The city of Atlanta, another good example, where the first thing they did was unplug the Ethernet cable from their computer. Say, wait, we can't contain this right now. We don't feel like we've plugged the hole. Now we need everybody that's able-bodied to go out and make sure that systems are clean before we start energizing those systems again and bringing them back online. And so it's really been interesting to watch. And so, yeah, it takes a Herculean effort. And I don't know if Colonial Pipeline has all of those assets just kind of sitting on the bench waiting for a disaster, but they may be looking to private sector to help them out, or to other folks in the private sector. Maybe the FBI has resources that are bringing. I honestly don't know, but something with this magnitude, hopefully they are getting the help they need.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that they have more federal help followed by federal regulators than they might be grateful for the first wave. The second wave, maybe not so much, depending on how this all shakes out.
Yes.
I think about this, Mike, and a lot of people have said that this should serve as a wake-up call to the energy industry. I would say that it should serve as a wake-up call to all industries, and realize that what you need to be doing to be proactive in protecting yourself and protecting really the service that you provide to the public. But it's interesting to me because the story also moved on so quickly, and it started out as there's been this big cyber attack, and everyone kind of gets the who, what, when, where, why on that. And it quickly jumps to, and it's going to impact gas prices, and all the attention goes to what's it going to do to gas prices. And certainly we can talk about that. But my question is, do you think anything will actually change, not just maybe in the energy industry, but more broadly? Or is this just a wake-up call that we're going to miss again, and we'll wait until the next so-called wake-up call?
I think, maybe I'm too optimistic about these things, but I do think that when something like this occurs, that everybody is kind of eyeing like, ooh, how did the bad guys get in? How did they get their foothold? What did they do? And all of a sudden the awareness is higher in all industries. You mentioned, the utility industry, for instance, they're very heightened on what they're looking at. But what about the rest of business out there? And yes, I think everybody should take note that, hey, we're eyeing what unfortunately happened to one of our friends, but how do we respond accordingly? And there's that old adage, don't let a good crisis go to waste. This is certainly a good opportunity to kind of look at your cyber hygiene within your organization, take a step back. And as more unfolds on the story for Colonial Pipeline, people will take that back and say, hey, look, we need to start locking this down, or we still need to lock that down. And maybe it frees up resources in some businesses to say, hey, look, it's about time that we noted that, hey, we have a glaring hole in our systems right here, and we've never been able to get it taken care of. Now is the time, or we might find ourselves in that same boat. So it really is unfortunate that it happened to them, but at the same time, the industry should learn, yeah, this is out there, and this is how you need to plug those holes.
Initial reports said that gas prices shouldn't be impacted if they could get this all back online pretty quickly. It's been a couple of days and they're still, not quite there. So gas prices already have surpassed $3 per gallon on average nationwide for the first time in 7 years. So I'll get you out of here on this, and hopefully you've at least taken a glance. But my local gas station, gas was at $3.35 today. That's about 16 cents up since, give or take, the time of this news breaking. Have you seen something similar at your local station? Not that that's solid data, just anecdotal, but are you seeing the same thing where you're at?
My scientific study says yes. And me driving to the gas station, yes. I am seeing the gas prices already starting to inch up. Now, I don't know if it's all attributed to what's going on with Colonial Pipeline or, the natural increase as we get into summer months and things are warming up. But certainly I'm seeing it trending up, and probably a little steeper than I'm used to seeing. So yeah, my scientific study says, yes, this is affecting me in my pocketbook.
Now, fuel prices, of course, are one of those things that don't just impact the price of fuel. Right. Everything needs fuel to get moved to where it's going. So that's your airline tickets. That's your food coming to the grocery store. It just trickles, and trickles is probably the wrong term. It rushes through the rest of the economy. So, Mike, I appreciate your insight on this. Your expertise is always valuable to our audience, and we appreciate you spending some time with us.
Well, thank you for having me today, Marty. I always appreciate it.
As we wrap up for this episode, I want to thank our sponsors at Valcom. At Valcom, you get much more than a dedicated IT retailer. They become an extension of your IT team. So whether you're a startup or an enterprise, Valcom has the technical sales and engineering expertise to make your business more effective and more productive. You can check them out at vlcm.com to learn more about Valcom's end-to-end solutions, the technology vendors they partner with, and so much more. That's vlcm.com. I also want to thank our supporting partners, the Utah Department of Technology Services, Kem C. Gardner Policy Institute at the University of Utah, our friends at Secuvant, the Utah Attorney General's Office, and the Utah Department of Public Safety. A reminder, you can follow us on Twitter at cyber24_, or you can follow us on Facebook as well. We'd love for you to hit us up in either place. Let us know what you think, or if you have a topic you'd like us to discuss. You can also rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe online.